Sometimes even good people can make a mistake. And when it happens, it's one of the most intense and emotional experiences of your life. It could be a DUI, or maybe you were in the wrong place with the wrong people at the wrong time. Or perhaps you just did something stupid at the spur of the moment without even thinking, and now you're in trouble with the law. Well, you need experienced legal help right away so you don't become a victim of the criminal justice system. Even good people can make a mistake, and if you, a friend, or a loved one has been accused of a crime, don't make another mistake by hiring the wrong attorney for the kind of help you need. You need to visit toddjohnslaw.com. That's toddjohnslaw.com, and then call Attorney Todd Johns today. Attorney Todd Johns has decades of experience helping good people like you who have made mistakes or bad decisions and will stand by you every step of the way. toddjohnslaw.com.
All right, here we go. Hey, Paul.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Good to have you back with us.
Yeah, great to be on your show. You guys do a good job.
Hey,
You're catching up. I think you're right behind Jim D'Eugenio and Lisa Pease as our most guests that have been on our show the most. I think you're right behind those two.
yeah.
I'm right behind them, eh? Okay, well,
Catching up.
I'll have to get a Jack Ruby do a mission for me.
Oh boy.
That's ruthless, isn't it?
Oh,
No.
that is ruthless.
Oh,
What a
sorry.
way to start the show, buddy. What a way to start the show. All right, Professor. We don't need any introduction because, like I said, you've been on a million times, but we have a lot to talk about. I wanted to talk about your great article on Kennedys and King on Jim's website about the missile crisis plot. And then I want to get into the black letters, and then we'll get into Richard Bissell's testimony. I want to get into stuff like that. And then I've been going through the files myself, and I found some interesting things. I'm back in the 2017 dump, and I found some things that haven't been brought up that I want to discuss with you because I don't know.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
So
Anything
we'll get
you
into
can-
that, but let's start with your article, the missile crisis plot.
Certainly. The missile crisis plot it's actually an updated version of the PEPE Letters article I'd written for Jim, and it's garnering a lot of attention. And just so you know it's led to sort of a partnership to look into it even more. That includes Bill Simpich, who I know was supposed to join us, but it includes
He was,
Doug
too.
Campbell, and it includes Dave Boylan. Now, I know Bill and Dave more than Doug. I've met Doug before, but the reason they're involved is in the case of Bill and Doug, they had written about the PEPE letters before I found them. I didn't, but we found different things, and we find them to be so important and so revealing that we said, hey, let's form a committee and do some file ferreting. And anybody who knows Dave Boylan and Bill Simpich, they're among the best, diggers when it goes into the files. And that's I think where you want to go now to get a better idea of what happened. My focus, as I've said, guys, since the JFK assassination chokeholds, I've turned a leaf. I said, okay, we've done it in English, we've got an audio version, we've got a digital version, and now we have a French version. Okay, and I said, I've said all I have to say about proving there was a conspiracy. I've read everything I've had to read. I've met Dave Mantik. I've spoken to Dave Mantik. I've talked to people like Jim D'Eugenio extensively about New Orleans, and there's just too much there. And now you even have Congresswoman Luna saying there were at least two shooters. Okay, so let's stop it. The official record. I even corrected Chat GDP. Okay, I asked them, to give me their definition of a useful idiot. And then I asked them, is Oswald a useful idiot? and they referred to the Warren Commission as the official version. Okay,
Yeah.
so I said, oh, well, why are you calling that? My next question is, why are you calling it the official version when later more credible investigations like the Church Committee and the HSCA, completely discounted it and impeached it and came out with solutions that should be more credible because they were longer and, they took place later with more information. And I got a very polite answer saying, hey, you were right to challenge me. And I should say and will say in the future that, the HSCA, in other words, that the first investigation was a Warren Commission to state this, but later one stated that. So, sorry for this long preamble. I'm done, trying to prove that there was a conspiracy. Nobody believes that BS anymore. And, so what am I into is finding out what happened and closing, tightening the noose more and more. Will I tighten it to, the last syllable of what has to be said about that? I don't think so. And that's where the missile crisis comes in. I've always thought that, first of all, if you accept that the JFK assassination wasn't a singular event in time, but that there was a buildup, that there were previous attempts, right? If you believe that, like I do, and I've written enough articles on prior plots, right? If you believe that, and that's why I was interviewed by Oliver Stone for his documentary, is tell us about the prior plots and how they're indicative of a guiding hand, right? So since I started writing about this, I mean, the prior plots just built up, and I'd get more editions and more cases. And there was a template there. And the template always involved a useful idiot who oftentimes was linked with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, whether it was Harry Dean, whether it was Santiago Garriga, whether it was Richard Case Nagel, whether it was Von Marlowe, whether it was Policarpo Lopez, and so on and so forth. It just was never ending. And what happened in the last year with the releases of new documents, I came on the mother of all prior plots, and that's the PEPE Letters, which I later said, the PEPE Letters, I was advised by a dear friend, Andrew Eiler, who co-wrote co-codes with me. He says, Paul, you'll get more credibility if you refer to it because the PEPE Letters almost sounds cartoonish, whatever. So I said, yeah, well, what could it be? It was really a missile crisis plot at the height of the missile crisis to take out Kennedy.
Yeah.
Okay, that involved black letters. And the black letters in question were 3 letters by Pepe Menendez. Okay, so that's where I'm at. Now, suppose you agree that there is a guiding hand, right? And you can find in the prior plot or the combination of all plots clues that lead to the perpetrators. So if there's a guiding hand and I don't solve the 63 assassination, outright, but I solve the 62 plot, am I not solving the JFK assassination? Or am I not tightening the noose a lot more if it's a guiding hand?
Sure.
Right? So if you go on that basis and you start seeing links there, well, then there are things that come out and you start saying, oh, okay. Now, the problem with the prior plots up to the PEPE Letters, whether it was Chicago, whether it was Policarpo Lopez in Tampa, is that they were kept hidden. The Secret Service destroyed files around all those things. So what we get are articles, we get a few writings in the HSCA about them, and then the HSCA says, look, this Lopez character, he's Fair Play for Cuba Committee. He left after the assassination, went through Laredo, went to Mexico City, and ended up being the lone passenger on a plane to Cuba. He was said to, he went to Fair Play for Cuba committee meetings. There are rumors that he met Oswald. Okay, so the FBI and not the FBI, the HSCA is saying, given that, how the heck could you not look into that? Okay, so people like us are trying to look into it. Now, when you get to the PEPE letters, it's a whole different ball because this was a case identified by the Secret Service, by the FBI and the CIA as a prior plot. Okay, it's not Paul Bleau saying that it is a prior plot to kill JFK. So they're doing that, and because of their own strategies, the letters can be found, the PEPE letters, the whole profile of the sender of the letter, a guy called Pepe Menendez. Okay, the profile of that guy is very precise. The profile of the recipients of the letters, because there are 3 recipients. There's a lot of meaning in that. There's an awful lot that can be found. And then the way the PEPE letters were handled by the CIA. Okay, so you don't have that in the Chicago plot. You don't have that in the Von Monroe plot. All you have are these bizarre, why are there all these people Fair Play for Cuba committee, and why, like they look like useful idiots.
Right.
But in the PEPE letters, you have all of that and a lot more. So that's what our group is looking into, is what are the files? And even since the article, we formed the group after I wrote my article, and we found a hell of a lot since then. To the point where you're looking and you're saying, oh my God, how do we follow up on these clues? Okay. And look, we're not, if we were to give you an opinion right now, it'd probably be a minority opinion because some are more cautious, others are saying, oh, no, but everybody agrees it's really worth digging into. There are too many similarities. And I prepared a similarity chart between the missile crisis and the actual assassination. And then we've added a third plot. And the third plot also has quite a bit of documentation. Is that at the end of 63 and the beginning of 64, there was a very short, intense period where the perpetrators were trying to blame the assassination on a Chicom plot, Chinese communists in cahoots with Castro.
Right.
And that one, it doesn't quite have the same amount of documentation as the missile crisis plot, but it has a lot. So, so then there's another plot in there. Now, so that's that. Sean and Bill is the context of how I got first interested. I said it's because when you read the PEPE letters. So look, in a nutshell, let's go through the missile crisis plot, the big picture of what happened there. Early on in JFK's presidency, he wasn't well seen by the military, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You have to imagine that he's replacing Eisenhower, and Eisenhower knew how to handle a Curtis LeMay or a Lemnitzer. He's seen these before. He's the old crusty veteran who,
Kennedy's a young guy going in there.
Kennedy, to us, he's the PT boat hero, and all that. But you think to Curtis LeMay that, they're impressed? No, they're not impressed. He's a playboy who's coming in and he doesn't have the wherewithal to handle the world events, and the nuclear, whereas, and he doesn't. He doesn't. The biggest mistakes he makes from the get-go is he doesn't replace Hoover and he doesn't replace Dulles. So now, who's controlling who?
You could also say that when he does eventually replaced Dulles that he didn't go deep enough with the cuts. That was a mistake Kennedy made, in my opinion. He fired Bristol and Cabell and Dulles, but he didn't go deep enough.
I agree with you guys on that. So, but so you have a Kennedy who's already, doesn't have the respect of the war hawks
And he
who
has different
are
ideology than those guys.
different. These guys are all graduates of World War II.
Yeah, right.
Okay, they're all World War II, where the Soviets are the evil enemy, and and communist is such an ugly word, and things like that. And you're not going to get someone who's talking about peace, who's talking about getting rid of colonies and colonialism and imperialism. That you're not pleasing the war elite nor the economic elite, right? You're not, you just don't have, and Kennedy's on the record, he made speeches against Algeria's, colonialism under
Yeah,
France. So he comes in, and then in 61, it starts off really on the right foot, right? With the Bay of Pigs fiasco. He's blamed. He's totally blamed. So now you have many factions of the overall haters of Kennedy that are independently hating him. They're not necessarily coalesced into one big group on the moment, but you have individual subgroups that are saying, God, I don't like, whether it's the mafia, whether it's Cuban exiles, whether it's CIA officers who were involved in the Bay of Pigs, and so on and forth. But I, for sure that by the missile crisis, Kennedy says, geez, I don't know if they're going to get rid of me, type of thing. Like he's seeing enemies everywhere and they want him to press the nuclear button, and he's not doing it. And they want him to invade Cuba, and he's not doing it. They want him to go into Vietnam, he's not doing it. So he's got to go. Okay, so that what happens at the height of the missile crisis is when RFK, JFK, and Khrushchev are really focusing on diplomacy, because Khrushchev's got his own pressures going on in Russia like this.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, and he's going on, and I mean they're saying, hey, wait a minute, cooler heads have got to be prevailed. We don't want to be the leaders who caused Armageddon. We don't want to press a button or whatever like that. And it says if we listen to our hawks, we're done. And so cooler heads had to prevail. But while they're doing diplomacy, what does uh, William Harvey do? He sends a mission down to
Yeah.
Cuba and attacks, and that's
Yeah.
what gets him thrown out of.
To Italy.
He gets him expelled to Rome, except Kennedy's wanted him out with the CIA. They want him out, but they send him to Rome,
Right.
and all he is angrier and able to work behind the scenes better, and he becomes, one of the persons of most interest in the assassination.
We know now that he's traveling under phony FAA credentials, which is extremely important. At the time,
And he's organizing in June meetings with Claire Booth Luce.
security clearance. Boy, her name is. The more I go through the files, the more her name and Henry Luce is coming up everywhere.
Well, he meets her, and okay, what is she? She's the big contact with the DRE in Cuban exile. She's sponsoring some of these illegal attacks. And of course, what does Life do? They show the backyard photos of Oswald.
Zapruder film.
They collect the Zapruder film. So they turn into Mockingbird's heroes in this whole thing, and
Sure.
and that whole stuff going on. And anyway, so it's hard to know exactly what went down between her and Harvey, but it stinks, right? This is a guy who's supposed to have been fired, but he's meeting her, and he's in Rome. So now let's go on to give a bit more context. I think it's October 1962, during the missile crisis. I think Kennedy somehow, before the most intensive part, or He had a motorcade in Springfield, Illinois. I think it's Springfield, Illinois. And two young fellows are arrested, picked up because they're aiming a rifle at him, a semi-automatic rifle, and they had ammunition up in the floor. They're picked up, two half-brothers. They're in their young 20s, I think maybe even late teens. They're still alive, or they were still alive up to 5 years ago. They're picked up and let go. They're let go, and we don't know anything more about them. They're just let go because they didn't fire. They didn't shoot. They just were saying, oh, we were testing our scope. We're doing this and like tease, so who the hell knows, for sure. So that happens. From a tall building. And you'd think that Kennedy, well, tall buildings would be under watch, but now in late November, that's when the PEPE letters start making their appearance. Late November 62, in and around the missile crisis.
And that's after the Chicago, or this is before. You're talking 62. Okay, never mind.
Before, this is
year before Chicago.
This is the earliest definitive plot that I have.
Okay.
Okay. The next one is
so this is 62, November 62.
There's a few things that happen in the spring of 63. Okay, that's in June. You have Von Marlowe. There's something that happens in Nashville.
Wasn't that when actually spring of 63? Didn't Dulles meet with General Clay and Martinez?
General Clay.
Yeah, Clay and Sierra Martinez.
Yeah, Paulino Sierra Martinez. Yeah. Well,
I think that was
that's Devil's Chessboard is fascinating. So but I'm not relating it to that. I'm seeing more of a. I'll talk to you about Dulles later. I talked to Dave Mantic what he thought of Dulles. He thinks that he had the beginnings of dementia in 62, 63. That he now it doesn't mean he didn't have roles to play and that he didn't have good contacts and things like that. But to be, to have the wherewithal to be the mastermind behind the plan. He's given me good arguments on why not. And if I read the Bissell modus operandi and discussions with my colleagues, I have two possibilities that how the assassination was managed now, and I'll talk to you about that a bit later. And that's where we're at, right? Is what the hell happened. So now what the PEPE letters, what's astonishing about them, okay, is you have to flash forward because the first black letters, these are black letters. Black letters meaning black ops, meaning that they owe their origin to the perpetrators. That's what they are.
There's a file on
that. Oh yeah, I have the letters.
Right.
I have all three letters. What I have are the original. It's really interesting. I have the original Spanish versions, the original envelopes, and the translated versions. Okay. But you have to flash forward, right, to say, well, okay, they're clearly provocations. So these letters, they're designed in a way like the three recipients that they choose are sure to make its way to intelligence. Okay, so in other words, the first letter is sent to a guy called Bernardo Morales at Radio Libertad at their post office in Florida, in Miami. Except there's no Bernardo Morales that works there, right? Radio Libertad is what? It's a CIA antenna.
Sure.
It's a CIA antenna. Okay, so then, but the plot thickens because this gets complicated. But I'll tell you, it's fascinating. So it gets intercepted. The person who intercepts it is the wife of a guy who's based more in Venezuela. And that's where Radio Libertad broadcasts from, but they have mailing and administrative functions out in Miami, and they're described as an antenna to the CIA. So they're very close to Janeway. And Radio Libertad had approached the American embassy in Venezuela to say, hey, look, we're going to do all sorts of broadcasts hitting hard on Castro and communism around the Caribbean. So they're sort of like a Voice of America, right? But Latino version. But they have their cast of characters that, in this whole mystery, you have a bunch of people that say they're anti-Castro, but they could be double agents. They could be useful idiots. They could be saying, well, I don't like Castro, or I like Castro, but geez, I have to eat. Okay. You have all these cast characters. Anyway, so Olga Duque, the one who intercepts the letter, who picks up the letter, says, what the hell do I do with this? So she gives it to a guy called Gejate. Gejate is a NAMOD being Cuban exile organized under the CIA for, activities against Castro. That's what a NAMOD is. And Gejate, therefore, works for the CIA.
Sure.
He brings it to J.M. Wave, probably to Tony Sforza, okay, because he answers to this group under Morales for some of the, the most violent and, most likely involved in assassination and coups in JM Wave. Okay, so he brings it there, and the letter works its way up to Harvey. I think it worked its way back up to Harvey, okay, because I think Harvey is the originator. All you have to do is get that leave behind agent, whoever it is in Cuba, to put it in the mail system and then look at the parade.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all you have to do. So I'll watch the parade. It's going to make its way here. And Lord knows how many letters were sent, but 3 of them made their way back to intelligence, either through the Secret Service or the CIA and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, where it gets interesting, okay, is I don't know where I want to. I'm going to get away from, because the recipient, the fact that it's designed to be intercepted is one thing.
Right.
The recipient, this Bernardo Morales, they said, you know what? After a while, they look into it. We think he may be a guy called Conte Aguero. Conte Aguero, who was a radio, who is a radio caster at one point and was a good friend of Castro's. Okay, so doesn't that sound like Patsy too? Right?
Sure.
Like a friend of Castro's and all that. Yeah. Okay. Now, keep in mind what happened a year later. We had our own Patsy, right? Was the Harvey Oswald, who's receiving letters, right? So we'll get to that later. So that's the first thing. The second thing, then there's a recipient of the second letter, a guy called Rodriguez. I'm forgetting his first name, but Rodriguez. So you have letter one, Bernardo Morales, the intelligence. And by the way, he doesn't have to be Conte Aguero or whatever. The intelligence says he could be that. Ergo, we're able to twist this into a Castro-backed conspiracy.
Sure.
Okay. Now, the letters, what does they say? They say, hey, you know what? They're such ridiculous letters, guys. You got to read them because their only purpose is to lay out a paper trail. Other than that, there's bravado in there. There's no beef. It just says that, that Kennedy, we're going to show them who's boss, and we're going to show them this and that and all that, and us. It's there, but who would take a risk like that, right?
Sure.
Who would take a risk like that other than saying, I need a document in my paper trail that I can pull out later, And what's very tacky. Pardon?
You point the finger at Fidel Castro.
Yeah. And all 3 letters do that. Okay. Now, because you have the recipient. The recipient number 2 is a guy called Rodriguez. And this guy is a chauffeur, and he eventually hands over the letter. Okay. And he looks pretty innocuous to me. But the intelligence says, you know what? We think that this guy is linked to a guy called Pino Machado. Now, who's Pino Machado? Castro's henchman. Okay. And he says, we think so because at one point, Pino Machado kidnapped somebody here in the US in 1960, and someone spotted Rodriguez being the lookout guy in front of the room where the guy was being tortured by Pino Machado. I mean, it's as stupid as that, but you've got the Pino Machado link, right? So you had the Machado, and remember the name Machado, because I'm going to come back to this guy. Now, let's get to the sender. Pepe Menendez. Who is Pepe Menendez? And I'm going to throw the question to you, Bill. Have you had a chance to see the article?
Not yet. No, I haven't.
Okay. So the key thing about Pepe Menendez is he's in Havana. He's the said sender of the letter, of all three letters. But he had been in Tampa up to about 1962. And you want to guess what he did in Tampa? If you had to guess what you could link him to. And this is what shocked me, is when I'm reading through these files and all of a sudden it says, oh, at one time he was on the chair of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee in Tampa. Okay. So, I'm getting, I just can't explain how important that is.
Yeah.
I just can't, okay? Because you're seeing all these prior plots. Why are they all being linked to the Fair Play for Cuba Committee? We have to remember that the Fair Play for Cuba Committee by 63 was almost dead, okay?
Right.
And why did they say? Because it's Castro's network in the U.S. Castro, and that's the House of Un-American Activities. They're saying it's full of Castro spies. So if you want, this is even better than saying you're a communist. You're part of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. You may as well be, at an Al Qaeda training camp today.
Right.
That's how. So Pepe Menendez is that. Oswald is Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Lopez is Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Right? So you have all that. So this is all very suspicious. Even the FBI says, God, this is weird, this is weird. These letters are designed to be intercepted, okay? There's a hoax, and they never solve it. They end up closing the dossier. I think, according to Doug Campbell, it was closed on November 21st, 1963.
Yeah.
One day before. They close it, okay? But the only explanation is it's some sort of hoax. It's some sort of problem. But when you look at the names involved, okay, so in a nutshell, then when you read about black letters and you say, well, these are black letters, they're black letters, then you ask yourself, well, who in the regime change specialists could do that? Have someone from Havana write up these letters, make sure that it goes to the right places and comes back to us. Now, on its own, you're not going to solve the case. But if you link it to two other plots, and I'm going to get to we're going to go to 1963. Okay, so if you link it to 63, and you say, what, all these things are happening? It's the same people. And 1963, this is the crazy thing, is we were aware of 5 letters from Havana, the Pedro Charles letters. Okay, the Pedro Charles letters are so important in this whole thing. And all this would have made sense and would have been okay if Hoover and Johnson did not decide to go the lone nut route. But if you go the lone nut route, then you have these things sticking out like sore thumbs that you can no longer explain away. It's like toothpaste that you can't push back into the tube. That's what happened with these letters. So when you look at the letters, say, well, okay, wait, don't dismiss them. Explain to me why they even took place in the first place. Explain to me why these happened. And don't tell me it's some sort of corny hoax and poor taste or whatever. No. There are too many similarities. There's one letter in the Pedro Charles letter. Now, so, I had studied the Pedro Charles letters. I found them fascinating. And basically what they are at the time, they were 5 letters. Okay, 5 letters that came in from Havana in late November 1963. Postmarked from Havana. I think one is even postmarked November 23rd. Okay, 23rd, one day after the assassination. 5 letters, some postmarked later in November. And same damn thing. You know how I told you one of the PEPE letters, they were all designed to be intercepted. Well, look at the Pedro Charles letters. One is sent to the Voice of America. Same thing as Radio Libertad. Another one is sent to RFK. Another one is sent to the New York Daily. And then there's the El Diario, which is a anti-communist publication. And the 4th one is sent to no other than the Oswald himself. There's a nuance here. The one sent to Oswald himself is by Pedro Charles, whoever that is. Okay, he's never been identified, but what we can see is he's a Cuban agent. Okay. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the PEPE letters are saying, hey, you got to meet your agents in Miami, Passac, New York City, Washington. They're all identifying Cuban agents, okay, and a plot to kill Kennedy involving Cuban agents. So now you got Pedro Charles in 63. He's the Cuban agent. And he's writing to Oswald. He says, my friend, since we met and this and that, and I gave you the money and I give you this, and you'll have more money when you come back. I told Castro how good a shot you were. You could put out a candle from 50 meters, going all this sort of stuff, okay? So that's a letter now that the CIA has their hands on, saying that Oswald is in cahoots with Pedro Charles, a Castro agent. So you got paper trail number 1. Now the other 4 letters are different. The other 4 letters are from informants, supposedly. And they say something that mean the same thing. They say, dear Mr. Kennedy, or dear editor of such a magazine, we want to let you know that one of the people behind the assassination is Pedro Charles. And we know that he's in cahoots with Oswald and Castro. Okay, so that's what the other 4 letters say, right? Mm-hmm. Now, eventually, you're going the little nut route. So Hoover has to find a reason to dismiss these letters. He says, we don't trust them. 3 of them are written from the same typewriter. Okay, and by the way, the writers, there's one guy, Lopez. Another guy's called Del Molita or something. And you have Pedro Charles. And some have written more than one. Okay, like I think Lopez, wrote 3 letters. So we can say, well, these guys are working in cahoots. So he says that. Here's the problem. And for this, I'm going to take a moment just to read one of the letters, okay? And this is the key thing that blows the case, in my view, wide open, okay? And in the view of our team. Hold on a second.
Hey, Sean, before we move on, I just want to mention our sponsor, one of our sponsors, DK's Corner, located in Jessup, Pennsylvania, right on Cherry Street, 201 Cherry Street in Jessup, Pennsylvania. Sean, I had a cheesesteak, and I know the ads always mention the cheesesteaks, and we've had a few listeners comment on that. I actually just had one yesterday, and I thought you were on a diet. I am. But I had to, well, the thing is, at work now, we've been ordering from DK's, and I keep smelling, everybody's ordering these cheesesteaks, and I keep smelling them. So yesterday I broke down, and I had to have one. It's all right. It's just, I'll tell you what, Sean, just delish. I love DK's Corner cheesesteaks. Dave makes everything himself there. Everything is so fresh. All the food he makes is just incredibly delicious. It's such a really a great menu too. I mean, it is. Bill, he gets really creative with a lot of the specials he has. Yeah, he has really good stuff, and his pizza's fantastic. But he always has incredible specials, Bill. And there's always different things there that, you always have to make sure you check, go on, look on Facebook, DK's Corner on Facebook, because he's always got different specials, different things. He's
constantly changing the menu.
Constantly. And that's what, keeps it fresh, keeps everything good. So he has breakfast. He has these breakfast bowls in the morning. They're delicious. Everything, like I said, everything he makes is great. He's got kind of a unique cooler in there with different sodas and stuff like that, different drinks. So make sure you call or stop by in Jessup. Again, it's 201 Cherry Street in Jessup, Pennsylvania. If you're local here in Northeast Pennsylvania, make sure that you stop by and check out DK's Corner. Again, just delicious food, Sean. I know you order from there a lot too.
I order constantly from their building. So many times that I sent people there. My brother went there, loved it. I had other people. Nathan loves it there. It's just a great place. Sometimes I take it out. Sometimes I even sit there. It's really comfortable. But we get so many people, Bill, listeners and stuff that said, "Oh, I went to DK's and it was great." I can't tell you how many people. We just had a question episode where people were talking about it. Just unbelievable place. So definitely check that out.
All right, definitely check out DK's Corner. Go to Facebook, look up DK's Corner. Again, he's located at 201 Cherry Street in Jessup, Pennsylvania. DK's Corner. We will be right back. Hey, Sean, I want to make sure that everybody knows about our Patreon. I know we mention it every once in a while on the show, but really important that people check out our Patreon. If you go to Patreon and search for That's Enough Out of You, or just click on the link in the description, you'll find we do an extra episode every week called The Speakeasy, and it's really usually just Sean and I kind of talking about the day's events, current events, and things like that. But a lot of exciting things. I mean, I know, Sean, you're constantly putting articles up there on our Patreon.
Yeah, and sometimes, Bill, we do bring on special guests. We had Dave Whelan on, we had Scranton Dave, and every now and then we bring Patreon members on. We've had different members, Scott Alfieri, Michael Pilch, Dan Hankey was on. So, there's an opportunity there if you want to come on the show with us. So there's a lot of things we're doing. Like you mentioned, Bill, the articles. I put articles up on a free site, but I also put articles on Patreon that's not available on the free site. We have a lot of times I put up future intel about guests that we have coming up and stuff that we have coming up on the podcast. And, we created a great community there, Bill. There's a lot of chat goes on there. There's a community chat and a lot of the comments back and forth. Just the Patreon members always have great insight. So it's a community, Bill, and it's an opportunity for people to join for a really good price, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, you can't beat it. You can certainly become a free member if you want to. There's also tiered levels with subscription amounts, and just for $1 that gets you everything. I mean, the $1 gets you everything, including our weekly show. There's other tiers. I think, Sean, what is there? A $3 tier?
$3, there's a $5, there's a $10. I mean, and there's a $50 if people could afford to give $50.
Yeah, I mean, totally up to you. Once you join, you can make that decision, and certainly, there's no commitment. I mean, you could join for a month or 2 months or whatever you want, and then you can switch your subscription around. Totally up to you. I mean, that's, people love Patreon for that reason. It really is. It makes it easy. It's kind of, however you want to do it, however you want to join. And we certainly appreciate anybody who joins our Patreon and supports the show, because we definitely, Sean, we're not getting rich off of this podcast, that's for sure. But we definitely, appreciate any support that we get from our listeners.
And, we also have our merchandise store. If people want to check out, we have the shirt that I have on now. We have mugs up there. We have cups, hats, anything you can do to help the podcast grow. We also have a bookshop up there, Bill, where all the authors that we have on our podcast, we have their books up. And it supports local bookstores, Bill. The money goes to local bookstores, a little bit to us, and then to the publisher and to the author. So it's a real good opportunity instead of buying Amazon and making
supporting billionaires.
Right, sure. There's an opportunity. And as far as Patreon, one last thing, Bill, if you want to join as a free member, we do put some stuff up there for the free members, and then if you like it and you want to upgrade, you can do that.
Absolutely. So definitely check out our Patreon. Like I said, there's a link in the description to our Patreon, or you can just go to Patreon and search for That's Enough Out of You, look for our logo, and just fill in the information and you can join. All right. That's it, Sean. We appreciate all of our Patreon members, and we hope that you guys will consider checking it out if you haven't joined. Thank you.
So I'll just give you the favor of the Pedro Charles slip. Pedro Charles, again, guys, it's dated November 10th, the letter. Now, it was postmarked, Pedro Charles, it was postmarked November 28th. So it could be a phony date on the letter, but imagine if it was written before the assassination. Okay, imagine, but it's postmarked. Okay, so now here, friendly. This is a translation towards English. Okay, friendly. It's Lee Harvey Oswald. One time more, I write you since the last time that we saw each other in Miami. The Spanish books that you took from the hotel, and I have hardly anything. I don't know what that means. I told you of the man who was thinking of visiting here shortly, and you, the man who was thinking of visiting here shortly, and you ought to close the business as soon as possible, like I told you before in Miami. I recommend much prudence, and do not be foolish with the money I gave you. So I hope you will not defraud me, and that our dreams will be realized. After the affair, I am going to recommend much to the chief, that he certainly will have much interest in knowing you, as they need men like you. I told him you could put out a candle at 50 meters, and he did not want to believe me. But I made him believe it, because I saw you with my own eyes, and the chief was astonished. Good, Lee, practice your Spanish, for when you come to Havana. For Havana is the land of the free, of the beautiful woman, and the rich Havana tobacco. Don't forget to do all I told you, to the very letter, and leave nothing that could lead your trail, could lead to your trail. And when you receive my letters, destroy them as always. After the affair, I will send you the money, and we will see each other in Miami, where always, sincerely, always, Pedro Charles. I mean, first of all, you got to be crazy to write a letter like that to a communist who went to Russia, and thinking that this won't be intercepted. You're leaving all the little corny messages, like, you're a good shot, Lee. I saw you do it, right? And you're a communist and this. And, Castro knows all about this because I told him. So he's behind this, but where's the beef in there? I mean, if there was something that was even remotely useful for carrying out the assassination, it has no use. There's no upside to this, and only risk. So that's one letter. And look, you have to read the other ones, but this is the one that's really important. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read a part of it. Okay, so as this is someone else, it's Del Rosario Molina writing to Robert Kennedy. Okay. This letter is to advise you that former Marine Lee Harvey Oswald was the man who assassinated your brother by the express order of a gentleman named Pedro Charles, residing in Miami, Florida. Okay. Young Lee received an advance payment of $5,000. Okay. And then he gave him another $2,000. And what else does he say? Oh, yeah. Pedro Charles reached an understanding with Lee Harvey Oswald, an expert marksman. Okay. So they know he's not a good shot, right? So they're saying that all this stuff. Okay. And he gives him all sorts of other. Look, I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
Let me ask you this. So, do you think all this information that we have now that they were trying, obviously the intelligence community going so far to try to tie this to Cuba, try this to Castro, and the fact that Johnson and Hoover to a lesser degree, but Johnson goes with the lone gunman theory. Do you think that's proof that, it kind of debunks the people that think he was the mastermind? Because there's so many people out there that say, oh, LBJ was the mastermind of this plot. But if he's the mastermind,
No,
they have to erase all that information that, all the work that they had to do has to disappear now because he's going the lone gunman route.
no, I don't think he's a mastermind.
No, I
Okay.
know, but do you think that
Yeah,
this,
no, I agree with it. I think it debunks that.
yeah,
And here's the other thing is the only thing you don't want it for some. Look, he may have wanted. He probably knew his career was in jeopardy. He didn't like Kennedy. We know that. Uh, so, and
I'm not saying he didn't have prior knowledge because we don't know.
no, because look,
But to say he's the mastermind is to me
no.
ridiculous.
He's probably a strong participant in the cover-up in this sense.
Sure, well, we know that.
Yeah, because uh,
No doubt.
what you want to do, if you're involved in something like this, is you want to pre-knowledge that someone's going to have your back after it goes down.
Right,
Okay,
right.
and that has to include the big chief. So maybe he's being told, it says, look, it'll be good for your career if this goes down. There's something that's going to happen, but we need to know Kennedy's not good for national security, is not good for the economy, or something along those lines. But you
And
have to have our
he
backs. We're not
erases
doing this
most
if you
of
don't have our
Kennedy's
backs.
policies. He just basically erases or reverses just about every policy Kennedy had.
Yeah. So that's a good point, Sean. I don't think he's the mastermind,
Oh,
but you know, oh no. And I always believe John Newman told me, he says, Paul, he says, those those who coups or regime change always come from the military. He says, now the military, I think they're important people who greenlighted it, and then the operatives may have been CIA, I mean, but I'll get to that later. Uh, the whole wink, wink, green light thing is hard to get down. Uh, I think there was probably likely a consensus that was reached, but without any contracts being signed or specific words being given, but yeah.
but let me
Now,
ask you this: how much? Because you brought up a point there about the military, but these regime changes, we're assuming this is a blueprint for what happened with Kennedy, but there's regime changes going on all across the world. In the Congo and Dominican Republic and Cuba. Was an attempt in Cuba and Brazil, and you see these Chile later on. I mean, how much of that is actually military, green lighted or involved? How much is the
oh,
military
that's
involved in
that.
that? Or is that mostly CIA?
No, the foreign ones, Sean, are, in my opinion, SAS. Okay, it's a special, actually SGA, special group augmented, where they were open about that. Like where they would say, well, because Chile ends up we end up seeing David Atlee Phillips in Chile, and what the special group augmented would come up with is sort of clear policy on who's our friend, who's not our friend, right? And
Yeah.
that's that special group augmented included RFK. It included Maxwell Taylor. It included Lemnitzer for a while. It included McCone, and probably before Dulles. It included, so you had this special group augmented coming up with, well, what do we do about these problem areas around the world? Now, the way it would get handled is through the regime change specialists, not necessarily the same solution everywhere. Was it an assassination in one spot? Was it rigging an election? Was it bribing? Was it, things of that nature? It all depended. But that's when I say it's the military that changes, it's just that you have many components of the military in the special group augmented, right? But it's not as if you don't have the CIA there. Also, the State Department's represented there. Okay, so the Larry Hancock wrote a book on that. Is apparently there was one time that Eisenhower explicitly said, kill this guy.
That was the Congo with Lumumba, I think. I think it was Lumumba because he was at a meeting. There was a witness that said at the meeting that he said,
You got to kill him. Okay.
That was Lumumba in the Congo.
It would make sense. It would make sense. But he wasn't killed until Kennedy got in, but the order was given beforehand. And that order permeated.
He was actually killed when Kennedy was president-elect, Lumumba. They split it up.
Yeah.
They sped it up.
Yeah.
Because they were afraid Kennedy was going to back him. That's why they did it. They sped it up.
There you go. Now, Lumumba, more specifically, will be my example to show you how Bissell said an assassination would go down, because
he testified, right?
He testified that, and then, look, the guy in charge of the assassination was William Harvey. William Harvey got the mandate. Okay, now he got the mandate, but the way he got the mandate is very different than other special ops. So, but before we go there, I want to get, you know what, I'll try and close the deal a little bit on the missile crisis thing, because, we're into comparing the letters, okay? So I told you that there was one letter that blows the lid wide open, right? And this one is from Lopez, okay? And I just want to make sure we get this right. Really impressive thing here. Okay, here's the key one, guys. This is by Miguel Lopez. It's one of the Pedro Charles letters, and he's sending it postmarked November 27th, and it's sent for the editor of the New York Daily. Okay. Dear Sir, it is a pleasure to write you this letter to inform you that the assassination of President John F. Kennedy was paid for by Mr. Pedro Charles, an agent of Fidel Castro in Mexico. This man befriended the ex-Marine and sharpshooter, again, Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay. They were frequently seen together on various nights. The aforementioned Mr. Pedro Charles had given Oswald $7,000 in advance. Okay. And then he says he had it, he later handed over $10,000 to complete the job. In other words, the crime was agreed to for $17,000. Okay. Mr. Pedro Charles uses other fictitious names and diplomatic passport to enter and leave Mexico and the United States. Okay. Well, you have that. And
so handed over the additional $10,000 to who?
To Oswald.
After?
No, he was to deliver 10,000 upon completion of the work.
I thought it said that it was delivered.
Okay. In another one, he says, this man became a close friend of former Marine and expert shooter Lee Harvey Oswald in Mexico. Okay, so let's stop there. November 27th. Now, if you recall the false testimony about Oswald from that came from June Cobb, that came from Alvarado. Alvarado said what? He said he saw Oswald receive $6,500 in the Cuban embassy from some black man with red hair, and he's getting that. Here's the key. How many people on November 27th would have known of Oswald and his trip to Mexico City?
Not many.
That's what,
Many,
guys,
I mean, yeah.
that detail. Okay, that's the one thing in all 5 letters that comes screaming out.
Yeah.
That detail, okay, means now Oswald, right? The voice on the tape's not Oswald, this and that. So there's a big false flag operation
Right.
to make Oswald look to be in cahoots with Castro
In Coast to Cove. And they keep,
through that. These 5 letters come and buttress all this stuff. It comes in and it adds to the paper trail. But when you want to close the lid on it and say, no, they're all phony, you have to deal with that line.
yeah.
They became good friends in Mexico. That can't be some oddball making something up like that.
Oh, somebody
You're done.
in the know. Yeah.
You're toast there. Okay. So what this means is, I hope what we're looking at is the guiding hand is not just good at black letters, right? The guiding hand doesn't have not only has a leave behind group that he can contact. And by the way, the number of Cuban agents in Mexico that answered to the CIA, I believe was 20 at this time. Okay, according to one report I read. I'm saying 20, is it 60? I think it's 20, but not many, right? So who can contact these people in Havana and say, type something up along these lines and send it? And by the way, you're going to include a nugget about Mexico City that only 8 or 9 of us know about?
Yeah. Right. Need to know.
Well, like if you're really logical about this, okay? If you're really logical about this, we can say the person that the stratagems started no later than the missile crisis.
Right. Sure.
That they're using the same tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're using black letters. They have the knowledge and the whereabout on how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we know they come from Havana because one was intercepted at the post office in Havana. One of them was because of a fire. So they're not forgeries in the US. You know what I mean? They are,
Right.
okay, so we know that. And one of them talks about Mexico City and includes in it the context of the $7,000. Okay, so if you're Sherlock Holmes here, or George Smiley or whatever, you're looking at that, you're saying, okay, who's running this? Okay, so the plot thickens, by the way. I'll add to this. Guess what? Last week we found 2 more letters.
Wow.
We found 2 more letters we never knew existed. We found one letter. Who was that one sent to? I think it's RFK also. The second letter to RFK. And in that letter, or in the report about the letter, there's a reference to a 7th letter that we can't find.
Wow.
So we're up to 7 letters around Pedro Charles. Okay, 6 that we can read. 1 that is only referred to. That Dave Boylan found out. I mean, that's new ground there, right? So it's a new letter. We don't have the original Spanish versions or the letters that I think they were written in Spanish at first in some cases. And we don't have the original envelopes. We do for the PEPE letters, but not the Pedro Charles letters. But we know they exist. And they are at the archives, and we'd like to get them. We would like to get those. Now, okay, so now what happens? Let's go to the third plot. You have the Chicon plot. Chicon plot is end of 64. And we don't have letters in this case, but what we have is a guy called Cortez, who's in the export-import business in Mexico City. And he is seen as friendly to Castro because That is a means by which you can get missing equipment and material to Mexico City is through this organization. And he frequently travels to Dallas. And there starts to be rumors, well, this guy, Cortez, okay, Cortez, you know, he's in the shoe business too. You know, Oswald got those new shoes from Mexico, yellow shoes, and he bragged about them to his barber, Chastain. And well, we don't have anything more than that, but you know, you're saying, okay. And there are hints that they're trying to link Cortez definitely to Castro and maybe even Oswald. That we're working on. Now, here's the whole kicker in this whole thing, right? Remember Machado, the guy I was saying that Machado would have been linked to one of the patsies during the missile crisis plot.
Mhm.
Now, we find out that Machado is rumored, these are in files, that the Cuban exile community is saying that Machado was likely the person who would have escorted Oswald to Cuba. Okay. So now you have the Machado PEPE letters, Machado, okay. And this is Castro's henchman, I remember him, he's a villain. Okay. Now you have Castro linked to not Machado being linked or attempted linkage to Oswald. Now, guess who Cortez's big friend is? Machado. So he's linked to the Chicon plot. Now, this is where it gets really weird. June Cobb. Sean, tell me about June Cobb. What was her role in Mexico City? Does it ring a bell?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of that was this. Her role was disinformation. Would you agree with that?
It was this information, but about what?
About I'll have to. You put me on the spot here.
Oswald, right?
About
Going
Oswald.
to
She was
going.
saying Oswald was there. I forget the specifics, June Cobb.
She said that she saw Oswald at a twist party
That's
with
right.
Sylvia Duran
Sylvia Duran. That's right.
and somebody called Delgaro. So she's creating a link between Oswald and Castro in
And
this.
then Duran comes under heavy.
Okay, and all these people answer, by the way, Alvarado, Vecianas through his uncle, all these false stories. There are 4 or 5 of them. And Dan Hardaway say, well, all these people answer to David Atlee Phillips. So David Atlee Phillips is concocting these BS stories
Right.
through.
Right.
Okay. Now we have a letter from someone that's in the files to June Cobb. And the letter is asking her about the whereabouts of Cortez and Machado.
Mm.
So now you have Cobb, who makes these BS stories around Oswald in Mexico City. She is now linked to Plot 3, Cortez and Machado. And you have her linked to, in a way, Plot 1, right? Because Machado is involved with and she, what is Cobb? What organization did she join in 1961? The Fair Play for Cuba Committee. So there's a hell of a lot of smoke around these 3 things. You're seeing the thing. So you have to ask yourself, if you find out who's running June Cobb, who's behind the Pedro Charles letters, who knows about Mexico City?
Phillips.
Well, Phillips or Harvey's network.
Harvey. Yeah.
Okay. So look, if you look at the common denominators there in terms of solving the plot. Now, how do you communicate this in a that it can be easy to digest? It's hard.
Very hard.
It's very hard. But I hope you're seeing the work we're doing. It gets complex, okay? And again, we don't all fully agree there, like we don't, some people are saying, well, Phillips could have brought into the game late in the game and had to play the game because we did an end around him.
And that's where Bill Simpich comes in, right? And we're
Bill
supposed
Simpich and others, I
to
disagree.
have some
Like we have a minority report right now because I
Right.
tend to, but we respectfully are listening because I agree to change my mind if there's information and they're coming up with good arguments and all that. Look, it's a lot of fun, really, because we're trying to figure it out. But here's the thing. Again, if you connect the three plots and you say they're connected, and I will tell you there's too much fair play for Cuba Committee, there's too much Machado, there's too much knowledge that only a few people could have had. There's too much knowledge of black letters and how you do that. There's too much, I said June Cobb in there, Machado, Conte Aguero. Conte Aguero is a friend of June Cobb's. Now, remember what I told you about Conte Aguero. He was suspected to be the recipient of letter one, but under a pseudonym called Morales. So,
Right.
If I've confused your audience in a way,
Well,
I'm attaining my goal. But what they need to remember from this is, first of all, go read the article that you referred to at Kennedy's and King, and go read the letters. Read the letters. Okay, and if you read the letters, tell me whether they're linked or not. Okay, certainly the same strategy. And tell me who would know about Oswald in Mexico City on November 27th.
Only a handful of
people.
people.
Tell me that. You tell me that. Okay, and if you agree that this is some cockamania plan, we're really zeroing in again.
Yeah.
We're doing it by the back door.
Sure.
It's
amazing stuff. It's amazing stuff. I mean,
it is. It's absolutely amazing, and that's where people have to go to now. It's let's stop it with. Do I really need another X-ray of the brain to figure out that there was?
we got to get past that already. We know there was a conspiracy, and now we're on to who was behind it. I mean,
and the beauty is Mooney's already said there's one, so we're on the right side of the official record. So let's get into problem solving and let the other naysayers try and prop this up. They'll look foolish.
Well, let me run because we've been going on an hour here. I want to wrap up soon.
Yeah, I'm wrapped up on the.
No, that was great stuff, though. That was great stuff. But I want to talk to you about a couple of the findings a couple of the documents that I found, and they were in the 2017 dump.
Okay, go.
This wasn't the most recent dump. This was back in 17. So I'm surprised that I haven't heard that anybody came across this, and I put this on our Patreon. I don't have the document number in front of me, but I put the number on Patreon for people to see. But there was a document that came in to the Office of Security at the CIA, and it was from the Dade County Sheriff's Department. And they were investigating Johnny Roselli's death. And they requested from the CIA their dossiers, basically their 201 files and information that they had on several different people, including a lot of the Cubans that were down in JM Wave. But they also asked for two people that were connected to Robert Mayhew. And
Sean, who's the they? Is it the HSCA?
This was
who's asking for the documents?
No, the Dade County.
Dade County is asking for the document.
Sheriff's Department is asking for the document from the CIA, requested it from the Office of Security.
Okay.
And they're requesting information on
several
Cubans. There's a list of Cubans, about 10 of them, and a lot of them are connected to JM Wave. And then they're asking for two people connected to Robert Mayhew. And the interesting thing is, I've also been going through the Garrison notes that you gave to Paul Abbott that he indexed and he sent to me. And I found an interesting connection because two of the names connected to Mayhew was Ed Morgan, who was Mayhew's attorney, And the other name was Joe Sheeman. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, but Shimon. He was a Chicago police detective that was tied to organized crime, tied to Roselli, but he was also worked as a contractor in Mayhew's detective firm. Now, here's the interesting link between the Garrison notes. When I was looking through the Garrison notes, there's a note there in a file that he had. He was looking at the phone calls that Jack Ruby made, okay, after Kennedy was killed, but before he killed Oswald. Okay.
Okay.
One of the people that Ruby called was Joe Sheeman in Chicago because he had ties to Sheeman. And Sheeman ties to Robert Mayhew. So this was all interesting. So here's the interesting thing is why is Dade County Sheriff, who's investigating Roselli's death, asking the CIA and these people, are these people suspects in their investigation? I don't know. This document is pretty vague. But what it says, the CIA on their end says we're going to gather all the information on the people requested, and then we're going to take no further action. So they're not giving Dade County nothing, you know. So that's what they're. But it's just interesting that, you know, this came up in these names came up in their investigation somewhere. And Ed Morgan,
That's a good linkage.
Ed
That's good
Morgan is a
linkage.
very connected lawyer, tied to Mayhew. He goes all the way back to Dulles. And he also goes to the Luces too. So the Luces are tied with some of these names too. So it was just interesting, you know, the Dade County.
I find that very interesting.
And not send you the document, you know, but have
I
you
lo
heard, like, I've never heard anybody come across this or bring this up because to me, that's pretty explosive stuff that they're
No,
like
I haven't heard that.
questioning these names. You
I'd
know,
see
one of the names they asked for is Rolando Massacre.
Rolando.
Rolando Massacre, am I saying that
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's
Yeah, they
connected to Captain
requested.
Cathay.
Yeah. So, you know, why are they like in I believe another one was Emilio Santana,
Oh,
which
yeah.
he comes up in the Garrison investigation because he was in the story with Ross Jeremy, where remember they go back to Fuge, they went back to that bar to identify Sergio Cacha Smith and Emilio Santana were the two people that were with her that said, you know, and they of course said Jack Ruby was involved. They were going to kill Kennedy, and their names come up. So the fact that all these names are mentioned is just to me, it's just what is the sheriff's department? Why do they have these information, and how do they get these names? You know, like what are they
You,
looking into? There's not enough in the document to know
you,
what
you,
the Dade County Sheriff's was looking into. But
you know,
obviously, they're not looking into the fact that this was just a pure mob hit on Roselli. You know,
the
there
two
was more
people,
to it.
the two people, Sean, who really are strong in that field, and we're lucky to have one on our team, is Dave Boylan and Larry Hancock.
Well, I'd
They
like to run it
know.
by Dave Boylan and see what he says.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh,
I've,
yeah. I would
I've,
love
I've
to.
run this by Jim too. I don't know if Jim DiEugenio,
Well,
no, I
it's,
sent it to Lisa Pease. I sent it to Lisa Pease.
but
And
Dave
I'm surprised
Boylan.
that nobody's seen this document. Nobody
I
came
love.
across. There's so
I
many of
would
them.
look. You have Dave's email.
I think I do. You sent it to me. You sent it to me.
If you send it to me or send it to me and him in CC and say we discussed it on the show, and that I'll tell you why is when I go through names, first of all, they not only know the names of every Cuban exile there is, they know their cryptonyms,
Mhm.
okay, and they know their aliases they use, and they know their background. So I work very closely with Jim on many things, but when it comes to JM Wave, Miami, and the whole Cuban exile scene, it's an area of specialty that and I don't agree with Larry on everything, Larry Hancock, and that's fine, that's normal, and even Bill, we're on, but I'll say this. Like I came up with something called Oswald's Escort, okay? And I described something like 50 sightings of Oswald with
Is that
Cuban
with the
exile.
muscular Cuban?
Yeah, and over 20 were with a short, muscular Cuban
Yeah.
and he thinks that's Carlos Hernandez. Okay, and he said why? He says he's a short guy, he has a scar under his eye, he's pretty stocky, he's a black belt in judo, and he's pretty sure that it's Hernandez. And you see the name Carlos Hernandez associated with Oswald concerning the McKeon visit. The McKeon visit is the gun runner who met Ruby.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and he opened a door for Ruby. He was the gun supplier for Castro. And McKeon opened a door for Ruby, or Ruby asked him to open a door so that he could spring Trafficante from the jail and everything. So to the speculation around the Oswald meeting McKeon, because he tried to buy 4 Savage rifles from McKeon, and he was with a Carlos Hernandez. And why? Why? And he was insistent and ready to pay a high price. They wanted Castro's gun supplier to be Oswald's gun supplier. But the HSC discounted that. But McKeon testified to it. And the McKeon Ruby stuff is all true.
Yeah.
And the McKeon Castro stuff is all true. There are pictures. And he did jail time because of that. And he said, no, I don't want to go to jail. I'm not selling you anything. But the guy showed up at his place claiming
Was
to be
McKeon
Oswald.
tied to Thomas Eli Davis?
He might. He might. I don't know. I don't know. Eli Davis
There was
is
a gun
interesting.
running connection there.
There's a Eli Davis Ruby connection.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, Paul, this is fascinating. Again, I mean, every time you come on, you give us so much incredible stuff.
Look, I hope I can
Yeah.
pass Jim and Lisa now with this one, but
You're close.
it's not bad.
Yeah.
But you can see from my background picture that I'm in Venezuela right now, and I'm
Oh.
running for the no, just for your audience, that's a phony picture.
Wow.
But
You know that's not Canada.
oh no. Hey, crazy things happening there, eh? Boy, it
Yeah.
looks
Yeah.
like it looks like you're back to Murder Inc. In the Caribbean. Well, except this is
Yeah.
kidnapping.
Not even hiding
Kidnapping.
it anymore, right? They're
Right.
not even hiding it.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Well, Paul, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on with us again. Every time you come on, we get so much new stuff. It's great. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be on your show, and it's fun is that I sense I'm talking to the right audience, to the right people, because, you can't bring up things unless you feel the people you're talking to have context. I mean, like,
Exactly.
so I know if I say Joan Cobb or whatever, a lot of the difficulty for the audience is understanding who's who, but what they want to retain from this show is there seems to be a definite template. And by understanding the template, you can sort of zero in on, well, there are not many people who can be behind the template. And think about it and wrap your brains around it, and you'll
Yeah.
probably, and by the way, the names that keep coming back are the top suspects. It's Phillips
Ooh.
and Harvey and Morales and
Yeah.
that gang. That would fit the bill. Okay, it would fit the bill. But I have a difference of it. Like there's just to end on this is, I describe the way you carry out an assassination in the CIA. You would get a focal point, the focal point, and you'd bypass everything else. So say the focal point is William Harvey, like he was for Lumumba, right? And then he would keep his internal team as small as possible and then outsource using a guy called QJ Wynn, who was a talent spotter, like for instance, for Cuban sharpshooters, and not
Right.
Cuban, Corsican sharpshooters, okay?
Yeah.
So that's what he did for Lumumba. But I'm being convinced that another possibility, I'm starting to look into that way of doing it. And then the other way is what you find in the book Tipping Point and even what Roselli was saying, is that the team that was put together of Cuban exiles to kill Castro, okay, probably using crossfire, was turned around to kill Kennedy. And the reason that one is interesting is because you sort of have the departure of key Cuban exiles and people at a certain point in time. Then they pop up, the Kennedy assassination takes place, and they disappear again. And I can't say much more on that. But those are two distinct. Now, does it mean maybe if it's a crossfire, there's a shooting team that's chosen one way and another team chosen another way? I don't know. I'm not there yet, but we're closing in there. I'll say this, the people that killed Kennedy were those within the regime change specialists understood how to assassinate.
Yeah, it's a small window. It's a small group of people that
Exactly.
could.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing to take away. The listeners are going to get confused with all these names. These names are going to just have people's heads spinning. But you got to just understand, there's only a few that could have, and the names keep coming up.
No, and the thing too is the person who's approached can't be too low.
Right.
He can't be too high, but he has to be high enough to say, well, the guy giving me the instruction, I can take this order seriously.
Mm-hmm.
If you're too low, you're going to say, well, they're going to throw me under the bus like that. But if you're high enough, you can say, this is legitimate. Mm-hmm. In other words, when you go on, then later on is you have the source of money, you have the power, you have the credibility, you have everything needed to get the thing going. So, if you start thinking along those ways, there are not too many people that fit that bill. In other words, I don't think that, say, the conduit is a special amended group. Let's say it's Lansdale or Fitzpatrick, okay? Fitzgerald, I mean. I don't think those people will go down to a Tony Sforza level or to a Morales level even.
Right.
They'd have to go to a level of people who can recruit those people, or make sure. So that's what I say. Hey, I gotta let you go, guys. I have a phone call coming in.
All right. Thank you, Paul. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Take care.
Take care.
All right.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye. That's Enough Out of You podcast is executive produced and written by Bill Rader and Sean Kane and edited by Bill Rader. The That's Enough Out of You podcast and logo are exclusive property of Bags of Chicken, LLC. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or accounts of this podcast without the express written consent of Bags of Chicken, LLC is prohibited. So don't even try it.